The New York Jets addressed many key roster needs throughout all 3 days of the 2025 NFL Draft, but surprisingly, Darren Mougey elected not to take a defensive tackle, one of the team's more pressing needs entering the draft. That has led fans to look at the post-draft free agent market and find some names the Jets could potentially try to bring in the building in post-draft free agency. And one name that has caught fans' eyes is a familiar face. That's Foley Fatukasi. Should the Jets be looking to reunite with Fatukasi? We'll talk about that and much more, all coming up here on a Tuesday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk with our guy Dylan Tereman from Jet Nation joining the show right here, right now. Let's go.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer, Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer, and Jets legend, Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
What is going on, everyone? Hello and welcome back here into another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk here on this Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. Make sure you smash that like button and hit subscribe. It's completely free and it helps us grow significantly here on the show. That's the free way to help us grow. The paid way that you guys have done a great job doing this month, which is really much appreciated. And get into our membership raffle. Every membership gifted or $2.99 super chat gets you a raffle entry. Prize we're giving away included Sauce Gardner signed jersey, Kevin Mougey signed mini helmet, Aaron Glenn signed trading card, Jonathan Vilma signed photo, Bart Scott signed photo, a free item from our merch store, a channel emoji, and we're going to throw some incentive into this. If you guys can combine, which you've done already this month, which is much appreciated, but if you can combine for 200 more gifted memberships by next Monday's show, we will throw in a Justin Fields signed helmet. So by next Monday, if you guys combine for 200 gifted memberships, if you hit it today somehow, then it'll get thrown into the raffle immediately. But if you guys combine for 200 memberships at any point from now to Monday, could be across all shows, a Justin Fields signed mini helmet will be thrown into our membership raffle. So appreciate you guys. As always, throw all your questions in the chat, call into the show with the pinned comment. But joining me right now here on the show, he was on the Next Gen Jets live draft stream. Dylan Tereman from Jet Nation is kind enough to grace us with his presence here on the program. DT, what's going on, my friend? Did you enjoy the all 3 days of the draft? Obviously, put a lot of work into it, so you're happy the work paid off.
Yeah, man. I certainly had a great time covering it. This was the first year where I feel like I covered it in this amount of depth. Happy to be back on with you. You guys were great. You and the Next Gen squad, that little pregame to the draft, that was a lot of fun, and I hope just the start of it for us. We're gonna be doing this a lot. I'm gonna have you on our show. I'm gonna be on your show multiple times. So this is the beginning of a long relationship for sure.
Appreciate it, DT. It's always a blast when I'm able to chop it up with you. Obviously, you have a lot of insight regarding the draft. You do a lot of work on these prospects, and you do a lot of work on this Jets team as a whole. Cover the Jets for, of course, Jet Nation. And I want to get your thoughts on the topic I mentioned right at the intro. I mean, the Jets were expected to select a defensive tackle at some point in this year's draft, but Darren Mougey traded up, a move that I thought the Jets were going to trade up and try to get Joshua Farmer. Instead, they elected to make that move and select safety Malachi Moore from Alabama. Bottom line, Jets did not take a defensive tackle, at any point throughout the draft. And the Jets fans are still looking for that big fatty is the name that we've heard, the big run-stuffing one tech to plug in the middle of the line. And Foley Fatukasi is a name that's come to mind. Obviously a familiar face, 6th-round pick, in 2018, spent a few seasons with the team, and ever since he really left the Jets organization, he struggled to latch on with other teams. Signed, I think, a 3-year, $30 million deal with the Jaguars. Didn't have much success there. Was with the Texans last year. Had a shoulder injury. DT, would you be open to bringing Fatukasi back, and how do you think he'd fit on this defensive line?
It's funny how this has kind of become a polarizing topic, specifically Foley Fatukasi. The list of names outside of him is very uninspiring. You got guys like Linval Joseph, Jonathan Hankins, Raekwon Davis, Jordan Phillips, Quentin Jefferson, a Jet legend. So like the names are not inspiring outside of Foley. So I guess if you were to throw a name into the ring, I guess Foley would make a lot of sense. Now, I think the Jets are more likely to sit back and wait and see what happens. Maybe on cut down day when everybody goes from 90 to 53, there's a good chance that somebody falls through the cracks that the team was hoping to get back on their practice squad, and the Jets are able to swipe them up. I believe that's how John Franklin Myers was acquired by Joe Douglas. So I think you can find a guy like that later in the process, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. You kind of hit on all the key things, though. Ever since he left the Jets, he really hasn't been able to find that same production. Only 24 tackles in each of the last 3 seasons. He did start 40 out of 41 games. Last season was the year where he dealt with the most injuries. He missed 4 games, weeks 11 through 14. Came back in week 15, tried to gut it out, only managed 6 snaps against, I believe, the Dolphins in week 15. Sat out the rest of the regular season, but then was able to come back, played 58 snaps over 2 games for the Texans in the playoffs. But I am a bit questionable on some of the analytics that I saw when just briefly looking at his PFF scores. 33.9 run grade is really bad. And I'm not saying that the film matches the grade, because PFF is certainly just a guideline. It's nothing it's not the Bible, it's not gospel. So I would have to dig in a little bit more to find out how bad those reps truly were. But 12 pressures, he had 1 sack, which came in week 1. That's never really been his game. 18 run stops and a 10.3% missed tackle rate, which for defensive line, 10% is not terrible. It's actually probably better than league average. So I guess if you were exclusively looking at him as a starter, I probably wouldn't. But at this point, you just need a body in the room who is going to give you something outside of Quinnen Williams and perhaps Derek Nottie. Maybe they like Tufele, maybe they like Cowart, maybe they
Leonard Taylor.
Right. Maybe they're just waiting for one of these guys to pop, or maybe not. So while Foley's dealing with the shoulder surgery that he had in the offseason, maybe he's still rehabbing. It's just giving the Jets and him time to feel out a potential reunion. So, no, I can't say I would hate it, but I don't think it's the preferred path for me at this point at the position.
1,000%. You mentioned Derek Nandi, and I think that's pretty much who Foley Fatukasi is at this point in his career, like an inconsistent run stuffer. You look at his first 2 years in the league, he was a top run stuffing presence in this league. He's been on that downward trajectory since he left the Jets, like I mentioned. I wrote an article about this earlier today, and my response was, not really. I think the Jets pretty much have Fatukasi in Derek Nandi, the guy who has the potential to be a top run stuffer in this league, but also has a very, very low floor. I really, really want to see Leonard Taylor III with an increased snap count this season. I really want to see what he's able to do this year. I'm a big fan of what he showed last year. Byron Cowart is interesting because he's a free agent signing who could provide some special teams value. Jay Tufele, I don't make much of that. This is someone I think who's been in the league for 3 years and is 0.5 sacks, I think it is. It reminds me a lot of Lecky Fotu, the big run stuffer who can't run stuff. So not feeling the Cowart hype much. I'm not a big J2 Flay fan. So I think it's pretty much going to be a combination of obviously Quinnen Williams, Leonard Taylor III, and then someone else in that mix, whether it's Fedarian Mathis, who was a higher round pick, a second round pick a few years ago and hasn't lived up to the hype. I know the Jets signed him to a futures deal. Perhaps he could be in the conversation for earning a roster spot. I think the Jets are pretty much set at defensive tackle, though. Maybe they add another guy at cut down day, like you said. Adding Fatukasi doesn't intrigue me as much as other people. That's something that's something I've been picking up on, because I know the nostalgia alone, bringing back a fan favorite day 3 pick is certainly exciting. But I just don't think it would be a worthwhile move for the Jets. And kind of moving over to another position of need for this team on the offensive side of the ball, Jets lack a reliable wide receiver 2 option behind Garrett Wilson. I know they drafted Arian Smith. I don't think he's a wide receiver 2 on an NFL team coming in right away. You look at the remaining free agents, kind of older guys like Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper. Here's what I have to say. Would you be open to trading for a wide receiver potentially? I look at a team like the Green Bay Packers. They drafted Savion Williams. They drafted Matthew Golden, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. Would you be open to try and make a deal for one of those guys? Young, upside, proven production. Would you be open to that?
Romeo Doubs, absolutely. I was just on with Tyson Roush of Let's Talk Jets. I said a similar thing. I said, wait for the Packers to have to move off one of these wide receivers because, like you mentioned, they drafted one in the first round, they drafted one in the third round. Obviously, they think really highly of those two guys at their top 100 picks. To me, Savion Williams was more of like a gadget guy, maybe like the design touches role for that offense, but perhaps they see him in a different role as maybe the Christian Watson replacement. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I just see differently than how they're going to use Savion Williams, but it does create too much in the room, so to speak, for the Packers at wide receiver. And Romeo Doubs, to me, man, like you have to go get him. I think he was a 4th or 5th round pick, a guy that I watched at the Senior Bowl, came away very impressed with his route running prowess. I projected that he was going to be better than Christian Watson coming like throughout that entire draft process. They obviously ended up on the same team, so it was really easy to see, in my opinion, that Doubs was better than Christian Watson. So to me, Doubs, I would be all over it. You're not trading, obviously, an asset from 2025's draft. We just had it. So now you're looking at a pick that's 11, 10 months projected out. So if you could trade a day 3 pick for a Romeo Doubs, who, in my opinion, would immediately slot in to be
Correct.
a wide receiver too, then it gives you also flexibility. You can cut Lazard. You don't necessarily have to find a trade partner for him. I know they're probably holding out for maybe an Aaron Rodgers reunion with him, and they can just swap 7th round picks and get him off the roster, off the books. But I would definitely consider bringing in Doubs. There's not many other free agents at wide receiver that I would bring in. I'm over the Keenan Allen and the Amari Cooper stuff. I don't think they have the legs anymore to be, productive wide receivers anymore. Like we're just doing the Mike Williams thing kind of over again, in my opinion. So I would definitely explore Doubs. And yes, you would have to pay him. I don't think the Packers ever extended him. So he would be in line for a contract extension, but I don't think it would be so lucrative where it would hinder your salary cap moving forward, and you could still pay your Garretts and Sauces and Jermaines and even your Breeses on a franchise tag or AVT if you want to, move forward with an extension for him. So I don't think it's prohibitive of salary cap purposes, and Romeo Doubs would slide in and be the second most productive wide receiver immediately.
Appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like button and hit subscribe. Dylan Tereman, Connor Long here with you. Tuesday edition of NY Flight Jet Stock. Throw your questions in the chat for us. Super chats, memberships, and raffle entries. You guys have been so generous this month, so appreciate your support. As always, Matthew Smith comes in with his member super chat and says, "Is Dylan Tereman pushing 40?"
I am 30 years old, so no, not close. We got a long way to go till we're 40.
So you got
hopefully you got more facial hair by the time I'm 40, though.
I still can't believe you're 30, GT. I thought you were like when I first met you, I thought you were like 23.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm cool with it. I'm glad that I look young. I don't certainly want to look old, but I hope when you hear me talk, I don't sound like I'm inexperienced and young. So I hope I carry some wisdom
for sure,
in my words.
For sure. Definitely appreciate you as always. And Dylan, I want to pull up your 53-man roster prediction that you laid out on the Buffalo Jet fan show last night. Subscribe to BJF's channel. He does a great job doing covering this team and talking about all things New York Jets. So I want to start with the offensive side of the ball. Some of the predictions you laid out. Fields, Taylor, not much there. I'll start with the running back position. I think the Breece Braille and Isaiah Davis pretty much consensus there. We all think that's going to happen. Kene Nwangwu, though, is certainly an interesting one. Someone this team re-signed last year, provide some juice as a kick returner. Then I'm going to kind of flip the question is, are you okay using a roster spot on just a pure special teamer, or do you think Nwangwu is able to potentially even carve out some type of role on this team's offense?
Sure, there's certainly the possibility that he carves out a role as running back 4. But when you get down to the bottom 6, 7 of your roster in terms of like players 47 to 53, you have to find a guy who's going to give you the special teams juice. So I have 2 specific special teams players, one on defense, one on offense. So Nwangwu becomes, the one from offense, and I feel good about it. I mean, he was able to give us some juice in the kick return game. He had the return. What was it, Jacksonville? I think he had the return against, or Seattle. Yeah. So he had a return for us. Shout out Phil Savage, keeping the lights on with that roster transaction. So yeah, I'm cool with at least 1, maybe 2, 3 at the most. If you want to, sell me on a safety that can be a good like protector.
Dean
of the
Clark,
punter.
maybe.
Yeah, sure. Like Ashton Davis was always the protect man on punt team. And he never let anybody by on Thomas Morstead. So, like, I would be cool with using a role for that. I didn't project that out in my 53, but in Wangu did. And then I have a defensive guy who is a gunner specific. So yeah, I'm cool with special team specific only.
Now, moving to the wide receiver chart, you don't have Xavier Gibson making the roster. He's someone who's kind of been on the fringe. You have the Jets only carrying 5 wide receivers. Is that just because you don't think Xavier Gibson is too much is provides value on the offensive side of the ball, and maybe he's just that pure special teams guy that we're talking about? But at the same time, is he even really that pure special teams guy? Obviously, he had the electrifying return in Week 1, 2023 against Buffalo, but has really struggled to latch on and stay consistent returning punts ever since. Are you comfortable rolling into the season with just 5 wide receivers on the depth chart, none who have consistently proven much behind Garrett Wilson, and you don't have Allen Lazard making the team as well, which I just noticed, and that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so with Gibson, I mean, outside of that kick return in week 1, or punt return rather, in week 1, where for 30 seconds we forgot our season is completely cooked anyway, and it didn't really matter. It's been a net negative from Gibson on special teams. Offense, he's really not giving you much. Like, I think Tyler Johnson could fill the production he was giving you on offense just from a 1-to-1 comparison. I don't think he's necessarily better or Gibson is better than Johnson. I think they're just kind of the same. But as far as Lazard, yeah, man, I have him going. I mean, even if we trade him and a 7th round pick for a 7th round pick swap just to get him off the books, like, I'm cool with it. And I only kept 5 in this projection because I wanted to keep 10 offensive linemen and 10 defensive linemen just to experiment with keeping more trench players than – I mean, normally I think Saleh and Douglas, they kept 19 to 20 trench players. So I kept 20. I could see a 6th guy making the list. And it's a guy I watched earlier today, in Quentin Skinner from Kansas, the UDFA.
Love Skinner.
I think he actually has a legit shot to make it. His route running is solid for a guy who's 6'4", 195. He doesn't have incredible straight line speed, but he doesn't really need it because his strides are so long that if you give this guy a free release, I don't know how many guys are going to be able to turn and run with him with just the length that he provides. And he was able to beat press coverage really well, at least in the games that I watched. There could be, some very bad games, but I watched Arizona State and one other game, Illinois. I thought he did fine. I pulled like 15 clips to highlight on my channel, but I think there's a path for Quentin Skinner to make the roster, and he would be the Allen Lazard replacement in terms of size, physicality. He's a willing run blocker. He's not the best run blocker, but the Josh Reynolds and Quentin Skinner as your big, taller, blocking type wide receivers, I could be cool with. So I could be swayed on a 6th wide receiver, but I tried not to keep a ton of UDFAs because I just didn't have enough exposure to them yet.
I think Skinner, DT, is like a lanky downfield threat with that size and weight. He averaged over 20 yards of reception last season, which is great. He didn't drop the ball either, so that's also a slight improvement from Allen Lazard. And if he's able to average 10 yards of reception with this team and have a solid preseason come on the scene, I would be more than if he's able to make the roster even. Great value find from Darren Mougey. Another undrafted free agent wide receiver who I really, really like, who I wrote about the other day for JetX as a potential replacement for Gibson, is Jamal Pritchett from South Alabama. I know he was down at the Senior Bowl, went to South Alabama during college. I think led the Sun Belt in receiving yards last year, which is pretty impressive. I know the Sun Belt is in some power conference, but led the Sun Belt in receiving yards and was a punt returner, returned a touchdown on the punt return unit last year. So if he's able to come in, replace Xavier Gibson, and do more potentially as that kick returner type role, and then also provide value on offense, I think that would be absolutely incredible for the Jets. So I'd be open to certainly be open to Jamal Pritchett with a strong summer. Now let's move over to your defensive depth chart. I'm going to start with the defensive line because there's already some interesting names I see on that defensive line, both on the interior. Phildarian Mathis and Fatorma Mobile. I'll start with Mathis because he was someone who was kind of a highly touted player when he was selected. I mean, he was a 2nd round pick. He hasn't played great when he's been on the field, but give him some slack here. He has been injured. He hasn't had the best coaching. He hasn't really gotten a fair shake at the NFL level. So I've always said, don't sleep on Mathis with a strong summer and him potentially sneaking himself onto the 53-man roster. You have him making his roster in this scenario. What do you project his role to really be like on this team? Is it a Eric Watts, Braden McGregor type role, except Mathis will be playing on the interior? Is it kind of that thing where it's, maybe they're a healthy scratch for a few games of the season, they play a minimal role? How do you think Mathis could fit into this team? He's interesting because he can play inside, I feel like, but he also has a lot of experience on the outside.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I do think it's a bit of a change for him if he was. I would project him as an interior exclusive player, although it does seem like Aaron Glenn likes, larger edge rushers on the outside. But I think more Aiden Hutchinson, or Zadarius Smith, those types of guys. Not so much Phidarian Mathis. You kind of hit on it, though, the injuries, the just not really catching his footing at the NFL level, all things that have worked against him. To me, it's kind of just hopes and prayers that he can untap some of that potential that made him a second-round pick a couple years ago. So to me, it's more of just like I have more exposure to him than Cowart or Tufele, so I felt a little better about the potential of him being something. So it's more just like a complete guess as to who that next big body in the middle is going to be. And I just hope it's going to be him because, like you said about Tufele, I didn't really have, good impressions or really any impressions when I watched him. Cowart, I haven't done enough on. I know that's a big Buffalo Jet fan guy. Shout out Buffalo. But I picked Mathis. He picked Cowart in his projection. So it is going to be interesting to see how they, fill out that room because, like we talked about, there's a hole at DT.
Now, Fatorma Moba from West Virginia. He kind of played that one tech role for West Virginia last season. 6'3", 309 pounds. Is he a minimal role type guy you have sneaking onto the roster with a strong summer?
Yeah, this is a guy who's probably going to do like the obvious UDFA, Leonard Taylor last year role where it's very minimal and you shouldn't really have a ton of expectations for him. But without going into the film yet on him, just doing Twitter searches and a vibe check on Fatorma Moba, it seems like he's the guy that's gaining the most steam to be the run stuffer in the middle. Again, not saying that his expectations should be high or really should have any expectations for him if he does make the roster, but I think he does have the best chance in a not so crowded room to be the UDFA that sticks.
Now, linebacker room, 5 linebackers. I think the Jets could still use some linebacker depth. Like, I've been open to bringing Chaz Surratt back as kind of a bulkier, run stuffing type guy, quick downhill. So I've been open to bringing Surratt back. But you have 5 linebackers making the team, one of which is primarily a special teamer in Marcelino McCrary-Ball. He played a lot on special teams for the Jets last year. Name I want to get your thoughts, though, really on is Jamin Davis. The Jets signed him to a futures deal back in January. But this is someone who was a first-round pick just a few years ago. When you're a first-round pick, I understand if you haven't worked out yet at the NFL level, you still clearly have some sort of athletic ability or athletic talent that shows as to why you were a first-round pick. We even saw it with Takk McKinley last year. Is Takk McKinley viewed as a bust? 100%. I mean, but he showed in the preseason his athletic juice, what a specimen that he was, back then he was worth a first-round pick. Jamin Davis, could you say the same about Jamin Davis? Do you think the upside of a first-round pick caliber player is still potentially there?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes with the theme of this coaching staff. And I know it was a pick or a transaction, rather, him and Mathis that happened in between finding a new head coach when Phil Savage was just kind of running things in the interim. But it is another one of those players where I can see Aaron Glenn saying, yes, he has that first-round pedigree. We see the untapped potential in him from 2023, 2022, where he graded out as a much better player. So maybe we can lean into our coaching, which is a big thing that the Jets seem to be doing with their roster, is leaning into their coaching and betting on their coaches to turn these guys around and develop them to be what they can be. Again, this isn't like I have all these high expectations for Jamin Davis. He's probably just going to come in and fly under the radar, but he could have that upside of the first-round pick. Now, he and Marcelino McCreary-Ball, if they swapped either of those guys out with the 2 UDFA linebackers, again, I haven't studied those guys yet, but if they want more of a larger linebacker, more of like the Kiko Malinoas, more so than the Quincy's and the Jamie and Sherwoods, I would be more understanding if they swapped out the UDFA for one of those guys. McCreary-Ball is not very big in size, and Jamin Davis is 6'3", 235, so like he's pretty sizable. It's just a matter of does he play with that big play strength like they're kind of hoping they can get out of Kiko. So it's all more about the scheme change with the linebackers to me. I think they want more larger run stuffing, run filling linebackers. So if they're going to go out and get those types of depth players at the position, maybe it's Jamin, maybe it's the UDFA. So the last two spots there are kind of up for grabs.
I want to transition back to the draft. And Dylan, I know you do a lot of draft prep. You go to the Senior Bowl every year, and someone who was at the Senior Bowl and was really a standout, and I think elevated his draft stock down in Mobile, was Azareye'h Thomas, and he's now a New York Jet. That pick was kind of polarizing among fans because, he was expected to be expected to be picked before the Jets selected at 73 overall in the third round. But he's also a cornerback, and the Jets signed Brandon Stevens to a 3-year, $36 million contract. Positional needs aside, DT, who is Azareye'h Smith as a player?
He is my favorite draft pick as a player. No, so realistically, he's my favorite Jets draft pick of the class. But as a player, man, you're getting a physical, long man corner who's going to press you at the line of scrimmage. He's literally going to choke you out. Like AG said, like that's his style. He does the two-hand punch. As soon as I heard AG say that, I immediately went back to the film and I was like, okay, let's go find scenarios where he does the two-hand punch. And a lot of cornerbacks, they do the one hand and then they swap depending on inside outside, whichever leverage they're trying to get. But AZ does the two-hand punch, and I think it's a boom or bust technique for corners because if you miss with two hands, like your momentum is taking you, and the wide receiver's going behind you. But if you can master that and that's your big thing, I don't know, man. You have two lockdown corners, him and Sauce, like Michael Carter in the slot. Like, who is passing on this team? Like, it's going to be really difficult for me to see a scenario where the pass defense is not a strength. Maybe if Stevens is the guy in there, but AZ to me, man, he's going to be a guy, like he's going to be standing on the sidelines, and it doesn't matter what Brandon Stevens is doing. It's going to be so hard to contain him on the sideline because I think his talent is just going to show out during the week of practice, during the game prep, during the walkthroughs, during the meetings. I feel like AZ is going to get it so fast in this defense that week 6, week 8, hopefully week 10, Stevens is playing on the back end with Cisco and Malachi Moore, and we have Sauce and AZ on the boundaries playing lockdown. So definitely one of my favorite picks, one of my favorite tape studies. Definitely had a rough going at the first day of the Senior Bowl. He let up 2 pretty bad reps in one-on-ones, and then the day 2 and day 3, he really picked it back up and stepped up and showed why he should be a top 100 pick. Realistically, he should have been a top 50 pick. I was mocking him and Savone Revel to the Jets at 42 pre-free agency because I just loved what I saw from AZ at the Senior Bowl. And Savone Revel, I mean, he fell because of the ACL, and I just thought it was good value. But then you add Stevens to the mix, and you're like, okay, corner shouldn't be on the list anymore. But at 73, I don't think anybody projected AZ to fall that far. So the talent and the value meshing at 73, it's too good to pass up. So I'm excited for him, and I think he's one of 3, if not 3.5 starters for this team in year 1 to like year 2.
Yeah, interesting because I hate the positional value at 73, but I really, really like the player from what I've seen, from what I read on him. So, if he's able to come in and he's able to be a lockdown option across from Sauce Gardner and effectively replace that DJ Reed role that he played on the last year's team as a legit CB2, a high-end CB2, a kind of really, DJ Reed last year was kind of a middle-of-the-road CB1. If Azareye'h Smith could come in and do that, I'm going to take the positional value aspect out of it, and I'm going to be a really, really big fan of that draft pick. But at this point, who knows? We've seen so many draft those classes that we've hyped up so much for the Jets that have gone nowhere, and we've seen the under-the-radar ones that ultimately have a lot of success. So all that matters, I think, right now for this team is that they go out, they win games, and I really, really am looking forward to see what this team could do with Justin Fields at the helm. I think if Tanner Engstrand, I really, really do think this. If I had to put money on it, is Justin Fields the Jets franchise quarterback? No, not at all. I think, though, if Tanner Engstrand could build some sort of scheme tailored around him with RPO quick passes, design quarterback runs, I think there's a chance he can give you maybe that Baker Mayfield, that Sam Darnold type resurgence for a season or two. I guess we'll end with that, Dylan. What do you think Justin Fields' realistic ceiling is with the Jets this season?
In terms of a ceiling, I would say he's a quarterback who's probably going to be below average in total passing yards, way above average in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. He'll probably get you somewhere in the range of like 35 to 37, 100 total yards, maybe like 28 total touchdowns. I think that might be a tad high, maybe 26 total touchdowns. We'll go like 19 and 7, maybe 19 passing and 7 rushing will get you to 26. He's probably going to turn the ball over a little bit more than we would probably appreciate as Jets fans. And I'm not saying Rodgers was perfect with turnovers, but Rodgers was very risk adverse with the turnovers. And when he did throw them, it was, kind of in bunches, and then it would go like a long streak without the turnovers. So I think we're going to probably see a more consistent turnover thing with Justin Fields, maybe like one a game, whether it's a pick or a fumble. But I feel like the fact that the ball's going to be in his hands, whether it's passing or running, so much that you can kind of excuse the turnovers. I would say he probably ends up as like a top 14 quarterback in the league if Tanner Engstrand is able to
That's
thread
the
the
ceiling,
needle.
you think?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what the win total ceiling will be with Fields, but it's tough. I would say above average league wide with the other quarterbacks, nothing too crazy. Is he the future? Maybe we'll probably be asking for a second year just to confirm if he is or isn't, but you can have the pipeline guy in 2026 added to the fold, if that makes sense. Like instead of adding the guy this year and doing the dance next year of is Fields the guy, but we have this guy, we can start that next year where it's like, okay, Fields is still an unknown, but we kind of like what we saw last year. Either we build on it year 2 of the contract, or the guy we take in 2026, hopefully a first, second, or third round pick, will be there in 2027 to take over. So I think they're going to give Fields 2 years, in all honesty, unless everything just looks bad. And then it's going to fall back on coaching too, because they felt very confident and not giving Fields any competition at the position. So it's going to fall back on coaching if the bottom falls out.
My dream, Dylan, is that like Justin Fields, this team somehow, like I think if you have a top 3 defense this year, which I think the defense can be if they really, really play up to standards and the coaching staff lives up to the hype, Justin Fields is the top 10, 12 quarterback in this league. There's a possibility this team is in the wild card round. Like there's a chance that could happen, especially with competent coaching. I really like the possibility of like, even if you just have a fun year like 2022, if you can get the win total up a little, like if you can have a 2022 type year with 8 or 9 wins, the difference, DT, in my opinion, from 7 and 10 and 8 and 9, although it's only one win, is just significant for me because this team hasn't won more than 7 games in a decade, which is just mind-boggling to believe. They haven't won 7 games since I've been watching this team play football. I think if they're able to get past that lump this season, and somehow Jeremiah Smith comes out from Ohio State, that freak wide receiver that everyone's been talking about, and maybe you trade up for him. The Jets have a lot of draft. They have a solid amount of draft capital next year. I think they have 4 6th rounders, a couple 4th rounders. If they find a way to like trade up for Smith, you get Jeremiah Smith and Garrett Wilson in the same room, 2 Ohio State guys, 2 highly productive wide receivers, and then you draft a guy like Carson Beck with your 2nd round pick, someone who's projected to be there in the 2nd round. Dylan, Carson Beck, the traits, the characteristics reminds me a lot of our guy Will Howard. Just the fact that he's kind of older, the fact he's won a national championship, has that mobility, doesn't run as much though, can make throws in and outside the pocket, highly accurate. And I will say I think Will Howard's going to light it up in Pittsburgh with the Steelers.
Oh yeah, I would say Will Howard to me is a lot better of a watch on film. I did not enjoy Carson Beck's film when I was watching Aaron Smith at all. I don't think he deserved to be the number 1 quarterback in last year's early mocks. Notice he's not in these mocks. He wasn't a first-round pick in the 2026 mocks.
That's why I said he's going to be a 2nd rounder.
There's been 5 or 6 quarterbacks that have kind of elevated their game above his, and I think that's just going to keep trending that way. I don't think – he's more of like Jake Fromm from Georgia to me. Like there's so many bad plays on his film. Like even watching Arian Smith, I'm like, okay, well I can excuse that drop because that was a duck. And there was a post pattern that Arian Smith was trying to run and Carson Beck threw it 5 yards short and 3 yards too far inside. easy
I
pickings for
want
the
to see what he
defense.
looks like another year removed from that
No,
shoulder
I
injury,
certainly
though.
agree. Like, and that's why I'm not I'm putting any conviction
Yeah.
into it. But from what I've seen early stages of Beck, and I didn't watch the Beck version that was getting him number 1 picks, but going into 2026 or 2025 rather for the 2026 draft, I'm going to be intrigued with him the most because he wasn't in any round 1 mocks that I've seen. He probably is sliding into that second round. Can he get back up into the number 1 round conversation? Because there's tons of quarterbacks I like more than him, and I would take like Lenora Sellers if he was there. Like, there's so many other guys I would probably covet over Beck, but I couldn't argue with the strategy of taking a playmaker for your quarterback and then going to get your pipeline future quarterback. I can't argue with that at all.
Dylan, appreciate your time as always. You got any final thoughts here before we end the show?
Nah, man. Like I said at the top, I'm just excited to continue doing shows with you. I'm gonna have to have you on my show soon, and
Let's make it happen.
just praying for your continued success. You and Next
Thank
Gen
you.
Jets, you guys are killing it. You guys are the
Appreciate
future,
it.
and although I look like I'm young, I'm still old. So you guys will take my job eventually. But I always appreciate talking to you, man. You're killing it.
Dylan, appreciate the kind words always. Follow Dylan. Find his work, Jet Nation YouTube. Read his work, jetnation.com. Follow him on Twitter, though. First things first, at Tereman on Twitter. So shoot Dylan a follow. Does an incredible job covering this team. Big X's and O's, guys. So please follow Dylan. Read his work. Watch him. He's all over the place. On with Jake Asman, on with the Buffalo Jet fans. So make sure you continue to follow Dylan. He's awesome. Your go-to source for all things Jets draft, all things Jets in general, especially from an X's and O's standpoint. So Dylan, appreciate you as always, and I appreciate you guys all tuning in here on this Tuesday. Smash that like button and hit subscribe. Have a good night, everyone. And as always, JTS, Jets, Jets, Jets.